All right, Alexander, let's talk about oil, gas, energy, price caps, India and Russian trade, which is set to double, I think I read. Oil trade, I think, is set to double between Russia and India, if I remember correctly. But no doubt about it that trade between Russia and India is surging. India is becoming a rising energy market power, it seems,
Yeah,
which is one of the interesting parts about the sanctions that no one really called or expected, but here we
no,
are. What
absolutely.
is going on here? And we did a video about Yellen and how she wants to push forward with sanctions of the Russian military industrial complex. We still do have the idea of price caps floating around as well, so we could touch on that in this video as well.
Yeah, but the price cap idea on price cap on Russian oil trade, Russian oil traded internationally, traded globally. Yellen proposed that there should be a cap on its price and that it should be enforced through the London insurance market. Well, India has just basically obliterated that. China has already said, look, we're going to buy our oil from Russia and we're going to do our own deals with the Russians and we're just not interested. But then China is Russia's strategic partner. Now, India has not been in quite that same relationship, or so it seemed. I mean, they do, in fact, the Indians and the Russians do refer to each other as strategic partners, and they do like each other. They're countries with a long history of friendship between them. But they're not as close as Russia and China are. And yet India has gone ahead. It's now buying Russian oil. It's now apparently Russia is now India's biggest oil supplier. And the United States has had to accept that. It's said that they're not going to sanction India for buying Russian oil above the oil price cap. And the Indians can continue to buy Russian oil above the oil price cap, provided they don't use Western insurance services, which is obvious. And on top of that, there's no objection if, after the Indians have bought all this oil from the Russians, they then sell some of it at a premium to the Europeans, to the West. So India is now becoming, it's now positioned itself where it's going to be the great middleman. It's going to be importing oil from Russia at a discount, but it'll be India which will decide, along with Russia, how big that discount is. And they'll be selling it, some of that oil, the oil they don't need, to the Europeans specifically, but, at a nice premium. So Janet Yellen's great plan is not going to suffocate the Russian economy or crush Russian oil exports or anything of that kind. What it's going to do, it's going to make India even richer than it already is.
It sounds to me like Russia and India are going to be laughing all the way to the bank. I mean, Putin and Modi are just going to, they're probably just cracking up at all of this. They're laughing their you know what's off. But Europe, the European Union is crying. I mean,
Yes,
that's my picture. I can see like
yes,
the EU just crying, and I can see Putin
yes,
and Modi just
yes,
laughing at all of this. Once again, the European Union is just getting hammered,
yeah.
and they're taking it. They're
You're
just,
taking it.
uh,
I mean,
a movie reference came to my mind. A movie reference came to my mind. I don't know if you saw the movie Animal House, Alexander, from the
yes, I have. Of course, I have. Yes,
1970s with
1987, whatever it
John
was. Yeah,
Belushi. Yeah, and there's a scene where one of the frat brothers is getting hit in his initiation, and every time they hit him, it's actually Kevin Bacon. Every time they hit him, he says, "Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another?" So that's the European Union.
I mean,
Anyway,
it is
what
extraordinary
do you
situation.
make of all of it? It's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, at the moment, the Europeans are still buying Russian LNG. But apparently, once they're no longer able to, because of their own sanctions, they're going to be buying Russian LNG from the Chinese. Because the Russians will be selling LNG to China, which will then be re-exporting it to the Europeans. They'll be buying Russian oil at a premium, as I said, from India. And of course, if the gas hub with Turkey is ever set up, which I'm sure it will be, then of course they'll be buying pipeline gas, Russian pipeline gas from the Turks as well. All at big premiums, and it is so absurd, it is so ludicrous that it does make one wonder. I mean, it leaves one speechless, actually. Now, going back to India, I mean, you mentioned that Indian-Russian trade is growing, and of course, we're talking first and foremost about the oil trade, but beyond the oil trade, it seems as if the Russians and the Indians are actually moving towards a major economic agreements, which will result in a very significant uplift in Russian-Indian trade relations. So there's apparently a massive deal on the horizon. And by the way, there's a massive deal between Iran and Russia on the horizon as well. Patrushev, Putin's national security advisor, was recently in Tehran, but Putin had a telephone conversation with Ebrahim Raisi, Iran's president. So, you know, the Russians are cutting deals with all kinds of people. And it's very interesting to see how quickly they've been able to reorient their trade away from Europe, and how easily they've been able to find alternative trade partners. Pakistan, as well, has now come out and said that it's going to buy oil from Russia at whatever price it chooses, and it's not going to be bothered by any oil price caps that the Americans and the Europeans might want to impose. So you see, this whole thing is just gradually collapsing all around us. Even Yellen apparently now accepts that the bulk of Russian oil exports will continue outside the price cap. She still thinks that some small part of it will be covered by the oil price cap. I can't understand why she would think that, but anyway, she apparently does. Hope dies last, as they say.
Yeah, and you know what she says? She probably says, "Who cares? Let the Europeans eat it anyway." I'm sure that's what the Americans are saying. This, whatever goes wrong in all of this, the Europeans are just they'll eat the cost.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they will.
And they will.
So
yeah.
what is going on in the EU, in Europe? Is there anyone? Is there any country? Is there anybody that realizes this, that can put a stop to this? Because when you look at the geopolitical chessboard, there's one place that is being pushed all the way to the bottom. It's going to be the lowest country on the on the list, on the poll, and it's going to be the EU, the lowest region. It's going to be the European Union. I mean, they're getting it from every end, from every angle, from the U.S., from the Russians, from India, Turkey, Iran, you name it. I mean, they're getting hammered, and it's just so bizarre that there's no one that can put a stop to this, that can wake them up. It seems like they're zombified.
Yes. Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't know who is going to bring this thing to an end. You know, Meloni in Italy, maybe. I mean, I don't see her doing this, to be honest. I don't see anybody at the moment. And of course, in the media in Europe, this isn't talked about at all. There's some slight hints in Britain that I've noticed the Financial Times has been getting a little marginally softer on sanctions, and Sunak, who is no idiot. I mean, he's our prime minister in Britain. I mean, he's not an idiot, whatever else he is. He perhaps seems a little less, enthusiastic about all of this than say Johnson or Truss were. But I don't really expect any real difference. I don't expect I certainly don't expect the British to be the ones to take the lead to go for an alternative approach. I don't see that at all.
No, Sunak called the Russians a rogue state for
Absolutely.
the trip to the G20.
Absolutely.
I have heard about Farage making a comeback. Once again, I don't know how true that is, but that there was a poll saying that people in the UK, I think something like a third or a quarter of all UK citizens, if there was a viable third party option, like a serious third party, they would vote for it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's something similar in the EU as well, but in the UK, there definitely seems to be a fairly significant part of the population that is just getting absolutely fed up with everything.
I think that's
There's no alternatives provided to them.
exactly that's the point, and it's the same in Europe. There are no alternatives provided to people because, as we've discovered, the political class in Europe, of which let's never forget, the British political class is a part, even if Britain has left the EU. They are terrible at everything except one thing, which is retaining control and excluding any alternatives to themselves.
Okay. Any final thoughts as we wrap the absurdity
Well, I mean, the sanctions
of the
the
European
sanctions-
Union up?
This sanctions thing has been such a complete absurdity. It has been such a total disaster that I do wonder whether eventually, when people do start to wake up to the implications of it, it finally discredits the idea of sanctions. I mean, sanctions have got completely out of control over the last 30 years. I mean, they've been usurped from the only body that has the authority to impose them, which is the UN Security Council. Neither the United States nor the European Union have, in my opinion, any right to impose sanctions. But anyway, whatever. But they've been used in this incredible, profligate, ludicrous way. They've created massive problems in the system of world trade. They've triggered a global recession. Maybe at last, finally, somebody will stand up and say, somebody important will stand up and say this sanctions weapon has not just been overused, but it's been overused in a catastrophic way, and it really needs to be dropped.
It's almost a shame that Farage left the European Union, the Parliament, because I think he would be the one person giving those speeches in the EU Parliament, not probably, definitely calling out the absurdity of all of this and the futility of all of this, but I think he would actually be calling for the resignation, the firing of van der Leyen, of Michel, of Borrell. I just wonder, is there a mechanism that can get these guys out?
Oh yes, there is.
I mean, they have been beyond bad.
Absolutely. I mean,
very destructive.
Yes. I mean, some years ago, I think it was the Santerre Commission was forced to resign by the member states because of problems with corruption and whatever. So it can be done, but I don't see any sign of anybody wanting to do it. And bear in mind, at the moment, the Commission, the Ursula von der Leyen and Borrell and all those people, I mean, they're teamed up with the Greens in Germany, and that sort of show, that axis is continuing to trundle forward. So I mean, I think you'd have to break the position of the Greens in Germany before you could ever really do anything with people like Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, these two prop up each other.
Yeah, that's the unholy alliance. The Greens and the Commission. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, easier to get the Greens out than it is to get the Commission out. Yeah.
Yes, I would agree with that, actually. Yeah.
All right, we will leave it there, theduran.locals.com. go to Rockfin as well. We are on Rockfin, and go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code. Good day. Take care.